the next 15 minutes or so, I'd like to share some thinking that my colleague Andrew Razgi and I have been doing here at Kellogg. By the way, for the people who are new to the room, this is the first time I've ever actually done a presentation at Kin Global. I believe that this venue is about others. It's about sharing your wisdom, bringing you together. But I hope you'll indulge me for 15 minutes. I'd like to share some thinking. And I'd also like your input and your reactions. So what we're going to do is I'll share for 15 minutes or so what we think is perhaps a new perspective. And then you'll do a working break. Yes, it's nice to have a 30-minute break. Boy, isn't that exciting? But you're going to work for it here at Kellogg. So when we go to break, I'm going to ask you to have a conversation. So as you act like you're listening to the next 15 minutes of my presentation, I want you to think, what are the implications for what he's presenting on my industry, my business, my missions, my endeavors? Then we're going to go to a break. You'll have 30 minutes to choose a couple of your friends and colleagues to sit and have a chat about this phenomenon. So with that in mind, this developed from thinking about, this actually came about 2 years ago, and I was sitting around thinking, wow, a lot has happened. What did 20 years ago look like? So in preparation for today, I looked 20 years ago, 1995. AOL and Prodigy offered public web access for the first time. No social media, no smartphones. Apple was struggling to survive. Amazon was 1 year old. Hong Kong was still part of the United Kingdom. The United States was running out of oil. The next 20 years will make this dramatic change seem quaint. A friend of mine in the media industry, Shelley Palmer in New York, says today is the slowest pace of change we will experience the rest of our lives. And he's correct. It's scary and invigorating. Let's go have a drink. So one of the things I noticed is that we're all paying attention to all of these technologies. There are entire journals about these technologies that are popping up, even in the academic space. There are websites where people are sharing, fretting. There are shows on social media about all of these things. But somehow no one has noticed an underlying force that these technologies together create. And so as we thought about this phenomenon, we're modestly calling this a unified theory of technology and markets. What is the underlying force that unifies what technology's influences are in the marketplace for businesses, for business models, et cetera? And we recognized the most powerful force reshaping human activity for the coming generation will be the production and provision of products and services closer and closer to the point of actual demand. The impact of technologies in aggregate will be to enable us to produce and provide products and services of an increasing variety closer and closer to the moment and the location the demand arises. Now, there are a lot of implications here, of course. The nature of demand is changing rapidly across many industries. What customers expect, as you heard from Anne Pramaggiore, from her very traditional business, the expectations of customers are changing significantly. So allowing us to produce and provide these things closer and closer to the moment of demand is a transformative factor that technology is driving in markets. And this is not something that's brand new. It wasn't invented last year at the TED conference. We've seen this before. For instance, just-in-time inventory. This started in the 1950s and 60s, and people said, wouldn't it be a good idea to try and decrease our working capital costs by having less inventory and bringing the components we needed to create our products just before we needed them? And so we've seen this dynamic in multiple guises. The limiting factor, though, was not our desire. The limiting factor was our technology and our ability to use those technologies. And by the way, this process is still very early, but we can see the contours. These two people you probably know are Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs at the very beginning of Apple Computer. This is the first Apple computer. That was not their first project, however. You might know their first project was to develop a piece of equipment to make illegal, free, long-distance phone calls. Ken Fenoglio from AT&T, are you listening? That nefarious project is what brought Steve and Steve together. Now, at the time, the personal computer was a hobbyist's enterprise. It was just a fun thing that geeky people did in their garage, literally, and it became the personal computer we know today. The same thing is happening at present. Think about 3D printing. 3D printing is for the last 15 years has been a hobbyist enterprise. There have been people using it for business applications, say to make prototypes in laboratories. That was a practical application. But frankly, there were lots of people playing with the stuff. There are things called maker fairs. Hundreds of thousands of people, individuals who just enjoy making stuff, go to these fairs, and they've been experimenting, pushing the envelope of what is possible or even envisionable at these maker fairs for the past decade as they've arose. We are at the same point in this evolution today as we were with the personal computer in the mid-70s. The models are already emerging. There are some corporations, new businesses, that are creating the models to drive this to happen. When Reed Hastings decided to found Netflix originally, his vision was literally to allow anyone to download any movie, any video product on any platform. He realized the technology did not exist. The bandwidth did not exist. So rather than saying, oh, I guess that's a bad idea, I'll move on with my day job, he said, I need to create a path of unrealistic steps to get to that ultimate unrealistic objective. So I'm in the game. So I build a brand. So I have a place at the table when the technology is ready. And that became that silly DVD in the mail model. And all the while, Hastings had in his head, eventually people will be downloading what they want, when they want, at the moment they want that. Uber, of course, you understand what's going on there. You experience it. The nature of demand is changing. I don't even own a car anymore. Now, by the way, that has nothing to do with the notion that Kellogg doesn't pay me enough in my job or anything like that. It has to do with the fact that I realized 2 years ago I don't need it. I travel a lot. I'm on Tom O'Toole's planes a lot. I had a car going off lease. I realized I drove a little over 3,000 miles the year before. Who needs a car in the garage? So now I have the ability to call transportation, not a car, transportation, the moment I want, when I want it, reliably across the country. But it's more than this. That big new round of capital that Uber acquired isn't necessarily to do more TV ads in emerging markets. It's to create a fleet of self-driving cars. What does this do for bringing what you want, when you want, where you want at point of demand? And Tesla, Elon Musk is as close to Steve Jobs as we have living today. Tesla, the automobile, does relate to this dynamic. We can talk about that offline if you'd like. But the obvious relative of this dynamic from Tesla is the power wall, related to the conversation we had earlier with our friends from Exelon. What happens to this grid, this energy grid, when now more and more people can store energy and use that solar energy on the roof whenever they need it, whenever they want it? Is it economical right now for most cases? Absolutely not. Is it likely in the next 10 years it will become economical for more and more people around the world to do this? Absolutely. And so these are the things that are emerging right now to allow us to drive production and provision of products and services closer and closer to the demand. So think for a second about the longer term. We talked about 20 years ago. What about 20 years from now? That's a long conversation. It's invigorating, and as Brian Hoff said, scary. Let me give you an example. Today we have nearly 250,000 taxi and limo drivers in the United States, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 20 years from now, this role will be eliminated. What will those people do? Where will they go? Will the world be a better place? I think in many ways, yes. But how do we help this group of people through this wrenching transition in a way that maintains social stability, that provides prosperity that is widely distributed, and allows us to have that self-driving car arrive when we want, where we want? These are the ethical and moral issues, as well as the business issues, that we must confront as we confront this future. By the way, I'm actually rather happy about this because I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter, and they will never have to get a driver's license. Somewhat more serious, imagine a world optimized for scale manufacturing at a distance. In a world where I can create with a printer 1 unit of whatever I want, wherever I want it. What does this mean for China? What does this mean for our industry in the United States? How does the world change when the current model is I mine iron ore in Australia, I put it on a ship, I send it to China, I melt it down, I create steel and alloy it with stainless, I send it to a factory, I make forks, I put them in a box, I put them in a pallet onto an ocean-going vessel, I send them to the North America or Europe to a crate and barrel store, and I buy them. Or I download the file and I press print. True breakthroughs, though, as I said, won't happen due to doing what we do today more efficiently. These are good things, but the true breakthroughs will occur from doing things which were hitherto impossible. I was talking a few months ago with the 3D printing expert at Lockheed Martin down in Orlando, and he's a typical technologist with lots of demos, lots of cool stuff in his office, and we're digging through these cool things. And he picked up a part. A lot of people don't know that Rolls-Royce and GE have printed parts in aircraft engines. He picked up a part, and he said, this is a steel part. It had a lattice work in it, a lattice structure inside. He said, this steel part has the integrity of steel, the power of steel, and the weight of aluminum. This part could not have been made by any other process known to man before 3D printing. So implications, there are many. I'm going to give you 5 quickly. Number 1, the search for sustainable competitive advantage because of the rapidity of change is becoming increasingly difficult. So we need to start shifting our thinking to transient competitive advantage. How do we identify and profit from transient competitive advantage? This will change corporate structures, it will change ownership structures, it will change the way that we approach markets, customers, providing products and services, optimizing our businesses. I take this concept from Rita Gunter McGrath at Columbia. Scale ain't what it used to be. It used to be I could build it big and then it was hard to get in because somebody needed to raise $100 million to build that steel plant. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people, pundits, are talking about how now the advantage is to the little guy. Isn't it great? We can use Slava Rubin's Indiegogo to raise money from our friends, and they'll give us money for no apparent reason, and I'll run out and hire a couple people in Colombia to do some coding, and I'll build an app and I'll become a billionaire. Well, that's a simplistic view of the world. Scale still matters, but it matters differently. Think about Uber, for instance. Could you argue that scale doesn't matter for Uber? Why are they raising billions of dollars? Because they and their investors know that in order to be the platform control owner, we must be large. But scale is different today than it was in the past. This is a nuclear power plant schematic. Think about our friends from ComEd, and this is the challenge they recognize and they are fording through right now. When you have a fleet of nuclear power plants, the most efficient and clean the world had seen when built, in a world where distributed energy generation is rising, how do we manage this transition? But there is benefit to scale, not only ultimately, but in the transition. One of the reasons that Elon Musk launched the Powerwall was to provide an alternative use for lithium-ion, high-power lithium-ion batteries so that he could drive down the manufacturing costs through volume over time. So this won't all happen overnight, but we will see that scale as a strategic weapon will change in its application. Third, focus ain't what it used to be. It used to be that people would say, you know what, if your core business isn't doing that well, what you need to do is focus. Get rid of the distractions, stop doing all those crazy things, be great at what you're great at. Remember that? This was tomes of management strategy for years and years. And you know what, it worked. We still need to be focused. We still need to be great at what we're great at, but the reality is we also have to do other things. We must have a portfolio of options on the future because we cannot predict that future, and the future is coming faster. Here's an example, McDonald's, a beautiful company, a brilliant company that does what it does better than anyone else in history. In the early 2000s, they were having some trouble with their core businesses. And so the CEO at the time, smartly, said, you know, we're spending all this money on these great new enterprises. They look good, the numbers are good, they're even growing. But we need to sell those and refocus on our core, be great at what we're great at. So they did. And by the way, they made a lot of money selling them. They made a 50x return on selling Chipotle, which they built. They made money selling Redbox, the DVD kiosk company. They focused, and guess what happened? For 8 or 9 years, they won. They resurrected their growth path, their stock price accelerated, everybody looked smart. And there's even an article, a very well-written article from 2011 saying, aha, see, the key to long-run strategy is stop being distracted and focus. And then within a year or two, what was happening? Chipotle became the poster child for the bugaboo for McDonald's. Today, the millennials, and they will tell you this, McDonald's will tell you this, they're very smart, they're honest, and they're trying to figure it out. The millennials are not going to McDonald's. They're going to Chipotle, the company that McDonald's invented. At the time they got rid of it, one of their reasons was, it's not big enough to matter. We're a big company. Have you heard this before? Is Chipotle today big enough to matter? Platform control will determine value capture. Who wins the big prize in this environment? This is not new. I'm not the first person to say this, but it's evolving rapidly to a wider set of industries. We all understand Uber and Google fighting it out to control that platform. What does this mean for a General Electric or an IBM? IBM is being assailed from all sides by the advent of cloud. What does cloud do? Cloud allows us to have what we want, when we want, where we want it. Independent of device, independent of provider. And the people at IBM are spending a lot of time and effort the past 6 years trying to figure out what does it mean for each one of our business units. The people at GE are saying, we sell aircraft engines and gas turbines. We've got to figure out how to understand, sell the data, collect the data, build the platform that causes us to have the sustainable competitive advantage. And let's hope we build fantastic aircraft engines as well. New economic organizations are arising. The last time there was this much ferment and development of new economic organizations and ways of managing was the early stage of the Industrial Revolution in the United States and the UK. As you can read about in Alfred Chandler's great work over many years, the railroad created the modern corporation, the multi-industrial divisional firm, the ways we manage, the stock owner, share owner form of the company, because we were managing more complex, far-flung enterprises over longer periods of time. We were managing trains so they wouldn't run into each other as they passed. This turned into things like time zones because of the railroad. The same thing is going on today as a result of these technologies. New currencies like Bitcoin. I don't know if Bitcoin will succeed. Here's my suspicion. My suspicion, and this is based on a lot of conversations, but I'm not willing to put any money on it, maybe some Bitcoins. My suspicion is Bitcoin will hit a wall and blow up. That's just my guess. But following behind Bitcoin will be something else. Maker Faire, I mentioned, this is a group of an affinity of creators that get together to learn, what are you doing, what can I do, how can we do something new? It is the nebulae that is operating, that is creating these new opportunities. Indiegogo, we'll hear from Slava Rubin tomorrow, founder and Kinian, we're proud to say, of this crowdfunding leader. AngelList, Techstars, accelerators for new businesses like 1871. 10 years ago, none of these organizations existed. These are the implications. We're thinking of more. I'm interested in your thoughts, your reflections, other implications of this. And so here's your job. For the next 30 minutes, I'd like you to go out, have a coffee, chat, get to know someone hopefully new, and ask this question. Select an offering of your organization. That could be your product, or for a university, Ben, it could be the education we provide, teaching cases, who knows. Prosaic to complex, pick an offering for which you are currently paid. Second, what is the value people, organizations, customers get from that thing? Not what they pay you, not what the thing does, not features, not functionality, the value. Transportation, not a car. And then, if we push this logic closer and closer to the point of demand, further and further out into the future, what does the world look like? How will that value be provided? And maybe the kicker, what will it mean for my company over the long run? Is the challenge clear? Go have a conversation, and please be back here at 4:40. Thank you.